Despite the Syrian government's acceptance of the joint special envoy's plan of initial proposals to resolve the crisis, the violence and assaults in civilian areas have not stopped. The situation on the ground continues to deteriorate. Violence should have stopped months ago. Indeed, it never should have started, particularly since it was unleashed in response to the legitimate demands of the Syrian people, the same demands that people across the Arab world have been making for more than a year now.
Former Secretary General of the United Nations.
It is clear that more far-reaching action is urgently required. Immediate and verifiable steps are needed to complete implementation of commitments in the crucial days ahead. I have urged the government to complete implementation of its commitments so that we can move to a full cessation of armed violence in all its forms by all parties within 48 hours thereafter. We must silence the tanks, helicopters, mortars, guns, and stop all other forms of violence too. The violence in Syria cannot be addressed through the means of a traditional observer mission interposed between two armies. The situation is fluid. There is no established front line. Peace will not be consolidated without credible political process. What we would need on the ground is a small, nimble United Nations presence. It would need to be deployed quickly with a broad and flexible mandate.
After consultations among council members, the Security Council calls upon the Syrian government to implement urgently and visibly its commitments, as it agreed to do in its communication to the envoy of 1 April, to A, cease troop movements toward population centers, B, cease all use of heavy weapons in such centers, and C, begin pullback of military concentrations in and around population centers, and to fulfill these in their entirety by no later than 10 April 2012. The following statement on their behalf. What we know, as opposed to what the government of Syria has said, is that yesterday, in fact, as in previous days, the violence has intensified, and our understanding is that yesterday was one of the more violent days of late in many of the Syrian cities of concern and in question. Now, we have heard statements by the government that they intend to begin to take steps to meet their obligations under their agreement with the Joint Special Envoy. As I've said in the past, we will be looking at actions and deeds rather than their words.